Open Interpreter to see what do people like about it, what do people struggle with, how can we make this easier? And this new version addresses a lot of things that were not so fun about the last version. And it's based on some really incredible agent computer interface technology um, that is just remarkably good at using your computer. So, first of all, what this whole project is all about and what we're all here for is in the age of artificial intelligence and the age of language models, there is this way now to get a little bit of intelligence into our software. And something happened when the first Open Interpreter came out, and around that time, a lot of other projects, which was if you give these things a computer, they are suddenly really, really capable. Like if you try to judge me on my abilities in this world and I don't have a computer, it's like, what can I do without my computer? So same goes for language models. And there's clearly going to be a future here where, in the same way that folks kind of found higher and higher ways of communicating with computers from binary to assembly to higher level programming languages, there is going to be some kind of interpreter here which can communicate between the language models and the lower level computer stuff. Oh, am I still able to be heard, by the way?
Yep, loud and clear.
It's all good? Okay.
If you're having trouble in the
So,
audience hearing, just pop out, pop back in. We got lots of seats.
oh, do we have a limited seats from this too? Do we have like
We had that issue
100?
last time, unfortunately, so hopefully it doesn't happen again. Seemed to be fine.
Okay, cool. Um, so this is an ACI project, an agent computer interface project. We're trying to figure out how should language models control computers? How should they talk to them? And the first stab at that was let's give them an interpreter. Let's give them the ability to write code and execute the code and look at the output of the code and keep that going in a loop. As folks have climbed the SWE score, the software engineering benchmark score, which is tons and tons, it's like the Olympics of AI agents, tons and tons of GitHub issues that need to be resolved. There have been some really smart advancements in that technology and some really great ones coming from Anthropic recently too, who just went and I think quadrupled Devin. Devin blew us away a few months ago. It's way beyond that now. And the agent computer interface that those models are trained on, it includes an interpreter, it includes a file editor, and it includes some form of GUI control reminiscent of the computer API in OS mode. All of those tools are coming to Open Interpreter next week, and they're on the development branch right now. And to be clear, this is an agent that scores 49% on SWE. It is going to be in your terminal. It is open source, blows past Devin. It has been such a blast to play with. I'm going to show you what it's like to use it. Beyond the agent actually being significantly better because it has beyond just an interpreter, it has also the ability to make changes to files. It is way more beautiful, and we've fixed a ton of problems with Open Interpreter that made it a pain to use. So I'll need to know, Mike, if you can hear me okay when I switch over to the demo mode. And also, can you see my screen okay?
Yep, seeing your OBS.
Okay. Let me get a little bigger. Okay. I'm so excited to show you this, and I'm going to bust out the feature list too of this. And this started, by the way, some of these things we've been talking about for a while, and they've been available in Open Interpreter. We just haven't talked about them too much. And that came under the name the developer update. Um, we're kind of workshopping what the name of this new update is. It's not entirely backwards compatible, and I want to have some time after I do this demo to talk to everybody and find out what features we need to keep in this next version of Open Interpreter. Because it isn't backwards compatible, we might do semantic version and put this out as an Open Interpreter 1.0. It's not going to be that until we're sure it's stable. but this is not totally backwards compatible. It is a brand new architecture. It is much more reliable. It fails a lot less, and it feels a lot better to use in your terminal. So let me show it to you. And again, you can join in and play around with any of this stuff. Just pip install from the development branch. I think Mike put it in the chat too. This is the old interpreter. Let's just start here. This is Interpreter Classic. Pretty good. Pretty good. Takes about, what is it, like 3 seconds to start up. Interpreter 2. Nice. Kind of purple stuff going on from Rich. This is the new interpreter. It's done. That's how long startup takes. Done. It is lean. It is light. We are having a language model that runs 2 new tools now. So you can see here we got our tools active, interpreter, and file editor. The default model is now Claude. Used to be all OpenAI, and now it is defaulting to Claude. It's all the great stuff from the old version of Interpreter, but you can already see a few cool things about it. One, it just looks sick. It looks like a retro, like there's something really interesting about this, like all the kind of command line interfaces that computers started with, and how this is a little bit their return. Um, Everything that you love about Open Interpreter. You can see here too, we have beautiful multi-line support. And with the multi-line support, that means you can paste stuff in. You can really easily paste things into this. 3 of these, paste some huge block of code in, do whatever you want. I have a question about this code, and it'll respond. Okay, it's faster, and that's nice. And I think it's prettier too. You'll notice too that there's little differences here in the way that Markdown gets rendered. We built a totally new Markdown renderer from the ground up to fix one of the most annoying things about Open Interpreter, and I'm going to show it to you in a second. So I was just playing around with it before this. Like this is kind of like showing you what it is in the state that it's in. Um, I'm just gonna try to have some fun with it, and it'd be cool too, Mike, if I can't see the chat, so if anybody wants to try stuff out while we're doing it or after we're doing it, um, we can do that. But I'm gonna start out, and I'm gonna say, can you make a React project on my desktop for a snake game? Immediately, we're gonna see some new UI, which is just gorgeous and gives us the line numbers of some things. And I'll tell you about the new things that are in this in just a minute, but this is gonna pop into the desktop and install it. Now you'll notice color. We got color in the output. We used to have this kind of wild stuttering. This is a proper pseudo terminal. It is proper. It is capable of loading bars. It's capable of displaying like ASCII animations. One of the most fun things I've been having with this is actually to just completely use that. I can say, hey, make me some like matrix rain animations. And because it's using a proper pseudo terminal, it's able to control the cursor and do all that. Before we had weird, like just string stuff coming in and kind of cursor of the terminal going back and editing things. Okay, look at this. So it's not here yet, just running ephemeral code. It has actually made a folder here. It's a knitted that React project, and it wants to create this file, game board. I think it tried to make it in a new components folder, so I had to make that. This is the file editing tool. So we have here, okay, I'm gonna do something that blew my mind when we were playing with the Markdown renderer. Are you ready for this? I can scroll up.
Hey, Kelly, would
In,
you mind lifting up the bottom of the terminal a little bit? The bottom's just cut off.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Does that work? Is that okay?
Yeah, looks great.
A little more? Okay. We can scroll up. I don't know if you've noticed this in Open Interpreter, but because we were doing so much rich terminal emulation, it was controlling the cursor in weird ways, and you get these artifacts. And a lot of people had the idea that the reason maybe that that was happening was because it was like using a bunch of tokens. It was a pain to scroll up and see old things. This Markdown renderer that we have built from the ground up, it is streaming native. The reason why that was happening was because language models are streaming things, and that gets pretty confusing. How do you render Markdown before you know that something's going to be bold? You do the two bold symbols, and then you have to, like, by the time you get to the end of that, know that that was supposed to be bold. So this thing, there's a few projects in kind of React land that have those qualities that understand that language models stream Markdown. And so you should hold on to things and wait before rendering things until you're sure. And this does that in the terminal. It's the first thing I know of that is capable of doing that. So totally scrollable, totally beautiful. And you're going to see not only is this thing able to make, you're going to love this. It's not only able to make new files, it's not only able to execute code, it is making a targeted insertion into this file. So this app.js file, it is saying, I'm going to replace these specific lines with these specific lines. Ooh. Oh no. Okay, I'm not sure if that's going to make it work. Let's restart. Not yet 1.0. Okay, go to Snake Game on my desktop. You got this. I'm interested to see if it can pick up where it left off. Yeah, let's go for it. Oh, hey, all right. All right. Pretty nice. By the way, a huge reason why it is that we kind of want to be like getting this out and testing it quickly is so that we can find errors like the one that I just saw. And if you can be testing this with us and letting us know when you see things, then before it goes out, we can cover all these interesting things. So that was like a white space error. And it's good we got that captured. Okay, so this is cool. We got our snake game in React. And that's something that, you know, have seen things make files. Old Open Interpreter could kind of make files because it was able to run code that would make the file. But there's something else about this targeted insertion magic in your terminal that makes this a lot easier to use and a lot better at dealing with these projects that are not just ephemeral code blocks. You actually have scripts that you save and you want to iterate on them. So I'm going to say, can you change the game? Read the code first and make it more retro, black and white. It has the ability with its file editor also to view files. So you can see it's just like grabbing them. Now, I'm going to show you the A feature in just a second, which I've been really loving. It's taken a look at all these different files, and I'm approving each of them. But I don't know if you've had this experience with Open Interpreter, but there are some times that you want to give it the ability to iterate on something. Okay, let's see. Can it do this insertion? Beautiful. Beautiful. So it's replacing these particular lines. We know exactly what lines it's replacing with what. But it's making a lot of changes to this one file. It's making a lot of changes to this game board file. So I'm going to hit A. It now is going to make changes to that file whenever it wants to. I'm going to do this for game.js too. And it's just that one file. It's a very targeted tool, which is just letting it make insert changes to those files. It actually specifies a bit of text from the file that it wants to replace as the old string, and then it does like a little find and replace thing here. It's also capable of reinserting things on line numbers. Let's run it. So all I've asked here is I want to make a game. I have two can add bash commands to that. So I'm actually gonna do that too. Very cool. Very cool. Kind of minor changes. I want something a little crazier. But I mean, this is insane already. Like we have right here, like a full React project that has been initted on my desktop, and all I needed to have open was my terminal. I want to get a little bit crazier. Scanner, terminal, retro, make the BG black. I'm going to ask it in a minute to build an autopilot for the snake. I was having fun with this earlier where I gave it like a speed slider. So you could play really, really lightning fast snake that was impossible, but then you can hit the autopilot button and it would take over. You're going to have a lot more fun with this too, just telling it what you want to build. Weirdly too, because it's so nice to just have some general place where all my projects can go. I've started to put way more things on my desktop. By the way, this is hands-free, what's going on right now. Because I approved those paths, and I know that this is a tool which is exclusively, it's only able to make a targeted change to that one file. I can trust that when it goes off and spins and does things, it's safe. It's just going to make changes to that file. This is a new file, so I'm going to also add this to my approved paths. And in addition to paths, the fact that I gave it that bash command, that opens up a really interesting world that a lot of us have been talking about from the beginning of Open Interpreter, which is test-driven development. So this is something that I've been playing. So here it is. It restarted the development server because that was one of the things that I let it do on its own. This is so sick. This is so good. I love this green glow that it's picked. And from my requests to do this, I didn't have to press anything. I just backed into myself. I love this blinking. It's gorgeous. Like there was no Open Interpreter before where making a whole bunch of different files and making changes across those files was as easy as this version. Oh, come on. All right, there we go. Now, if I can specify bash commands that it's allowed to run exactly by the string, it can't break out of that. You can use this thing for test-driven development. So what I mean by that is the way that this model, again, what we are using right now is the latest Anthropic, which uses an interface, which is an open source version of their tool set that it was trained on. So it has seen these tools. This model that we're talking to, it knows really, really well how to use the file tool to make targeted changes to files. It knows really well how to use the interpreter. And it has 49% on Sui. And on Sui, it's just up against a ton of PRs, trying to fix them according to the description. And it's able to run code. And the way that it does it is it makes tests. So what you can do is you can say, can you just make my tests pass? And as it goes, notice the files that it wants to edit and approve those ones, approve the command for it to run PyTest or whatever, and then walk away. You have something that it can only run that command without approval. It can only edit those specific files without approval, and it'll just keep iterating and keep running the tests and seeing what fails and changing the files and running the tests. There's a lot more. I'm gonna just go down the list of the new things that we got. But is there anything we should do? Like, I'll check out the chat. Like, is there anything like?
There's been a question about if you can pass a folder into it.
Oh, totally, 100%. I mean, that was that thing there too, where I kind of just I'm gonna. Well, I kind of wanted to have the context of all this stuff too. But it's the open interpreter you know and love. So if I drag in a folder and I say, what is this? It's just adding it as text, but it completely understands that. And not only is it capable of viewing um, files, it's saying, I want to view this file. I want to load this into my context. It's also capable of viewing directories just the same. So it's going to tell us the whole project directory. I was going to check out the package JSON. All right, go for it. Yes. And I didn't need to know any of this. I asked for a Snake game and I asked for it to look retro. And now I have a Git initialized repository on my desktop that was just custom made for me by the best performing SWE agent in the world. Should we have it do it in Rust? What's this?
A little talk about
Okay.
UV.
Get this. This thing's UV. This thing's coming to UV. So we found out that a lot of the GitHub issues, if you remember, like have been people trying to install Python. The Astral team is so cracked, and they've been working on ways to install Python programmatically from the command line. And the new Open Interpreter, we have those one-click installers that kind of attempt to do bits and pieces of this. But if we're running in UV, so we're going to ditch poetry, all in on UV. Take a look at this new install line. It's going to be curl openinterpreter.com/CLI bash. I don't think that's right, actually, with the pipe there, right? Yeah,
Right.
it's got to be. Very jealous of PyEnv and how easy it has been to install that. But,
Could you
you
show the
know,
bottom a bit more? The terminal's just cut off
yeah,
a bit.
yeah. Let me jump
Nice.
this up.
Perfect.
So still working on this, but the one-click installers are going to be switched over to use UV and install Python using what the Astral team has built. So that from any computer in the world, you are this command away from talking to it like a person and using what I genuinely think with these two tools is the greatest computer controlling agent in the world. Because we're going to be switching to UV, and we have something that is going to be much easier to install on computers that don't have Python. I kind of want to slowly we are moving towards something that is pretty Python independent, that you just think of as something that you install like this. And some very cool thing that we learned from the last version of Open Interpreter is that OpenAI compatible server, when you run dash dash server on Open Interpreter, is very useful. It was very useful in the O1, where if you just make something that exposes an agent on a computer over an OpenAI compatible endpoint, there are like a billion SDKs that you can use to play with this. So this new version of Open Interpreter, it works really, really well in the terminal. It's gorgeous. And because it's going to be so OpenAI compatible server native, where all you got to do is just I dash dash server, all those client SDKs work with it. So you're also two lines away from opening up a computer controlling agent on a computer and then connecting to it with anything that has been built to talk to language models. That is like the universal thing, the standard that has emerged is being able to talk to an OpenAI compatible endpoint. Lots of great apps out there do it. And if your app does it, then you just have to spin this up and suddenly it can control your computer. 49% SWE verified in your terminal. One line installer that's going to install Python, a great OpenAI compatible endpoint to play on top of it with and to develop things with. It's very Unix-y. Like this is kind of a little bit the aesthetic direction of this, is that it's kind of looks a little Unix-y. Looks a little old-timey. That's true also in that Unix is deeply embedded, and the pipe command and ways of doing things with standard in and standard out not very friendly pre this update. Now Open Interpreter is like Unix native. It's like a standard install. So I can take anything, say echo hello, and I can pipe it into interpreter. Oh, of course. And now the standard out is going to be the output of interpreter. So I can shove this thing into different parts of my program, and there is no nicer way of spinning up an agent. It's like an Ansible script. It's really, really nice and clean. And the way that on our SWE framework, we used it a lot, is that you echo an environment variable into it. So you just say echo something like task. That's why we played with like a million kind of agent architectures around this. This is like 10 characters. You run this command, and whatever task you have stored in the task environment variable will get done. That's crazy. I'm gonna try to say echo we in a git repo to I. So cool. And then just exits. Clean, fits into what you built before, compatible with a lot of great things, OpenAI compatible endpoint, and pipe proper Unix handling of everything on the edges. Now, this was built because of this very cool idea that Mike had, and also that's in there's versions of this that are in the tool use pip package too that I'm like super inspired by the way. So if you have not checked out tool use of by Ty and Mike, you definitely should. They're putting out things like this. But Mike had this idea of, is there any way we can get something that just turns a commit, if you make some commit, turn it into something that updates the documentation. So while people are making PRs into Open Interpreter, if there's something that gets the documentation out of sync, we have a computer controlling agent here. Why couldn't we just do something like that? So it is absolutely possible to do that now. So I kind of want to try it. I'm going to say, is there a Git repo on my desktop? Is it going to work? Yep. Can you make a commit to it? Commit a README to it? Did it make a README? I think the last one might have made a README. Oh my God, it did. Look at this. Oh wait, that's from React, right? Yeah, okay, this is great. So it's going to replace it with a proper one. I think, don't we want to have it commit first? Yeah, I'm going to say no. Commit the changes first. So you make a commit now. Retract. Rad. Rad. Okay, this is so sick that we didn't even have to tell it to be, a good engineer. It just knows that we've been talking about Git now. It's going to commit its changes, and then it's actually going to make the commit itself. So we don't even actually need to do anything special. I thought we might have to. It's wrote a beautiful commit message too. But because you can use this thing with all the Unix compatible stuff, it works in CI. So when people push changes to something, if you wanted to make something that took the git diff and then piped it into interpreter and just asked it to make changes to the documentation to reflect that, we're going to have that up and running on the Open Interpreter repo to play with, but it's been built for that purpose, that this thing fits into CI. So I don't even know what worlds that opens up, if there's any ideas that you guys have, but I'm pretty excited about that. Beautiful custom renderer. Scrolling is fixed. Multi-line input. It's great with files. Open Interpreter before really struggled to make targeted changes to files. This one, it's native to it. It uses a pseudo terminal. If I say something like, can you execute bash to make a loading bar that animates? This was just way beyond what Open Interpreter before could do, and now it's trivial. And not only does this, by the way, it like feel awesome and is really cool that it can run bash and it's kind of properly rendered. It's also great for token management too, because before any changes to the cursor would actually result in it printing an entirely new file into the output. So, for example, that loading bar would actually render as like a bunch of states of the loading bar kind of coming open. And now, same as the human, when we look at this, it's, the loading bars in their final state look like this and consume barely any tokens. They don't consume, a million repeating tokens for the whole thing. And that's true for the language model too. So this bash tool is way better than what we had before. And not only because it's prettier, and not only because it can do more things and knows it isn't interactive, so you're not going to run into weird pseudo problems, but because of token management too. It's actually nicer on the model. This thing is tool native. So we are modernizing Open Interpreter. Before we had something that was doing a lot of parsing and we were handling a lot of that. Now there's a tremendous amount of parsing to get the partial JSON chunks that come out of the language model so that we can render these things in real time. So all that parsing is still there, but we're going to a tool-based architecture. So models now that are good at function calling. So for example, Ollama putting in great support for function calling is huge now. Because this thing is totally tool native. It's not doing any custom parsing with the backticks. I think that's the demo. And I want to now kind of talk to everybody and see what it is that, there's some things that this might be missing from the old version. There's some things that this does much better. But what we kind of want to know is, how do you use Open Interpreter and how can we make this update really, really good and solve problems that you're having?
There was one question from Cyanide that came through actually.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll see in the chat, but one minor roadblock I know the old interpreter had was that anytime you had to run a terminal command or Python run Selenium that didn't return immediately, it would get stuck until the program exited. Any chance it has a way around that now?
Okay, so this is a really interesting problem. And this opens the door to that. So the reason that's happening is because we in the bash tool were waiting for it to finish executing. But if this thing is just like starting up a server, then you're just waiting for the server to be done or for it to close out of it. So even with that snake game there, I was playing it and then I would control C to get out of it. And then that would continue the execution.
Sorry, 1 second. A few people are saying lost audio. I can hear you fine. Can everyone hear me? Because 5 people, okay, they can hear me. I can still hear you, Killian, but
Oh no. Oh, here both?
some people
Okay,
hear
good.
both. I think we're fine. Sorry.
How does that happen?
Ah,
I love the BRB of that. Um, okay, so this opens the door to that. So what's happening now when we manage a pseudo terminal, we are way better poised to handle things like that. There have been some really cool ideas where, if you're just holding on to kind of the reference to the pseudo terminal, then you should be able to detach. So right before we moved to this version of Open Interpreter, we added something. I don't know if anybody looked into any of the commits, called terminal patience. And what terminal patience was in Interpreter was, it's going to actually look at the output of the code. And if, for example, it has like an input, it's requesting something from the user, the language model would actually be able to look at that and then output a keystroke to acknowledge that. So if there was like a dash Y or like an input that asked for confirmation, it could actually send in a little Y. And that was kind of janky. It would just kind of like wait and then see if there was anything that that it was just, a good amount of delay, and then a dedicated little language model instance would just kind of look at the last few messages and then try to send something in according to the input. It wasn't on the main thread. Um, so Cyanide, the answer is we might be able to launch with that. That's definitely something that we want to put in soon. We might not. It might kind of be where it is with the single pseudo terminal, but because we're using a pseudo terminal, we have it store a nice input and just a list. There's no reason we couldn't append to that and give it the ability to make a command, detach from it, go off and live its life, and then check back in on the old command. Um, And that's really interesting too. And if there's more love of that, then we can prioritize that too. If that seems like something that would really help. Yeah, so by the way, the only thing too, on the development branch, some of the stuff now with classic interpreter is kind of rerouted and is not exactly out as it was. So what we're going to do is that we'll we'll always have that version of interpreter, the one that is in there now, the one that's in the computer use directory, which is going to be this next version, is going to start to replace those commands. So like I and interpreter will instead go to the new version. And you can always run like interpreter classic. We'll probably have IC to use the old one. But in your case, what I see is going on here. Actually, I'm gonna see here. Yeah, hypers that I think from that dev branch it's running OS. OS is going to be renamed to GUI. So this is actually enabling the GUI controlling tool. I think that makes more sense as a better abstraction than OS. And so that's why that command is broken. So try it with just I hypers. If you want to just install from the dev branch and then just try I, let's see if that works. Okay, when I used to run the old OI, I would get a kernel panic exit. Is that fixed? Yes. We're not using the same stuff. We're not using a Jupyter notebook anymore. That isn't how it's working. That was causing a million issues. This one, if it wants to run Python, it makes a Python file, it executes the Python file. If it has trouble with Python and that's not something that is it's you know that would have otherwise caused the kernel panic, you know what it's going to do? It's going to use Bash, which is much easier to support, to fix that problem and address it. So yes, totally. Can warpify this. Okay, by the way, there is one thing that I want to say is that we kind of like in in talking to more people that use things like this, um, that use the incredible Aider project and use Cursor, which is awesome. There's kind of some things that you get for free if you do a terminal project that you don't if you have something like VS Code fork. And it means that you can support warp. It means that you can support IntelliJ. It means you can support whatever it is that has been kind of um, holding you back from using Cursor, which although it's great, there is one thing, which is because we're following in the footsteps of some of the incredible Anthropic computer controlling work here and open sourcing tools and a computer interface to use models kind of like that know how to use those tools. They went ahead and trained this thing to use those tools, to train it on SWE and to get something that is just really, really good at using those tools. So I'm a Cursor user and I switched to this now because it's actually something that try the agent out. The way that that thing is applying edits in Cursor, it's a different kind of logic. And this raw just agent that knows the whole context of something and can make targeted changes, it does a better job. And it's in a loop with tests. It does a better job. It's reducing a lot of the clicking even that I do in Cursor. I'm still a heavy Cursor user, but that comes not only for free to anybody that's using Cursor, but also any other IDE, even if you're just using your terminal. Yes, the model flag works with I. Um, it's it's right now super. We have first class support with the new Claude models. Those are now going to be the ones the same way that we had for the OpenAI models, and OpenAI compatible endpoints. I'm finding some edge cases with other models that we're going to fix before it goes out. And I'd appreciate it too. Yikes, if you see anything with other models, let me know and we'll try to fix it. Yes, yeah, serve is the command. Serve is the command. Um and serve might not work right now, by the way. Um, but it's gonna work in the same way that the old interpreter server worked. Your credit balance is too low for the Anthropic API. Model open router. I appreciate the formatting, yeah, because that was nice. Yeah, okay, so this is one of those things. Let's get into the issues and report it and change it and make it so that we can get this thing out and it supports everything. This link looks like an API key thing, weirdly, that Open Router might be getting back to you. But that doesn't seem right either, right? Open Router is free. Okay, so that's it. Okay, hold on. This is a question that I do want to get into actually is profiles. Um, we're gonna have profiles. They I'm going to try to make them as backwards compatible as possible. It might involve actually just it kind of editing one of the strings in there as it comes in to support the backwards compatible profiles. But I would love to kind of find out what it is that you guys want to keep and what it is we can ditch because this project has gotten very big over the last year. There's a lot of features in it, and this version is going to be lighter and it's going to be focused on just the things that work really well and that this thing is really good at. Um, okay, yeah, let's take a look at this cyanide. Yeah, if you know, if uh, if we have profiles in there, we're gonna make them really, really good, and we're gonna follow through on this idea of having a place to store them. So I know Jordan actually is somebody who's been thinking about this of can we have a place somewhere where there's kind of recipes of Open Interpreter. In a sense, profiles, Nurminch is like it's the idea of having something set up the configuration for Open Interpreter to change the system message, to change the model, to change custom instructions, and to run code beforehand that then pipes into the system message. So, for example, Mike has this like really cool Obsidian plugin for it, and a talk to your database profile, which will go and fetch relevant information and then pipe it into that so that you can just run this profile. And now it's booted up with all the context that it needs, derived in real time to solve that particular problem. So profiles are great. We had a budget manager. Did anybody use the budget manager? Do we want to keep that? Yes, custom instructions for specific edge cases is totally good, Jordan. It's like it's that, but beyond that, it's also configuration things like like the model and you know context length and things like that. Two Dog, you made something for profiles or something kind of like profiles? I'd love to see it. Okay, can you save an interaction so I can reuse it later? This, I know, right? I feel it, yikes. Can you save interaction so you can reuse it later? So this is another thing too, is the the message navigator. So before we had dash dash messages, you actually could pop around. Um, and oh, by the way, uh, Orly for test drive. I mean, I would love to see kind of like some of the stuff that you guys are cooking up, but we iterated on some of those ideas that we've been talking about. There's going to be a mode that just has GUI control. So you can pipe something into this agent that has just GUI control as a flag. And then this is just going to be something that can try to resolve something with just the keyboard and mouse. Um, yeah, yeah, Jen does. Okay, so this idea though of having the budget manager, you know, having a cost maybe at the end of the session, Jackson, that feels nice because there are some things that Light LLM emits that we can kind of track and hold on to. But the infrastructure of like limiting the amount of money per thing might not be a totally necessary feature if nobody's been using it. We'll be able to use OS mode with this new model sometime soon. Yeah, so to be clear, like what we're trying to build here is a standard ACI, an agent computer interface. We're trying to build standard tools that right now Anthropic has trained a model on these tools. They fine-tuned something. It's really, really good. And there are other folks that are starting to train tool using models, but specifically what tools and specifically what interface, that's what we want to try to solve. And we think the only way we can do it is as a neutral player, which is just going to be defining some great open source tools that are really easy to install. And that if you make a model that knows how to use them, you get a free, beautiful CLI. Um, so yes, OS mode and absolutely anything that gets built, this is going to be model agnostic. Um, yes, yes. So this launch is going to come early with a tool spec. So it's going to have kind of a this is totally agnostic to Python or anything, but if you make a model that understands how to run these tools that use this description, which we'll keep iterating on, then it's going to be able to plug into Open Interpreter and use it incredibly. And the first example of that is okay, that's interesting. It'd be cool to see a budget of what you were willing to spend with a cache flag, so we don't go bankrupt using models with OI. This is interesting for CI/CD, Jackson. Actually, I'd love to riff on this a bit, because we do actually have a max budget command, um, but I don't think that a lot of people were using it. But maybe a lot of people just didn't know about it. Is it the case that like that's like I do think that's exactly what we have. It's like max budget and then you set a dollar amount. Custom tools easy to integrate? Yes. So there's two ways that I mean that though. One, now that this is a total just tool using agent and it's really based around tools. Literally, this thing just has a list of tools that are going into it. Um, and it's probably not something that we're going to make super exposed cyanide. But if people are building on top of this thing, there's a place in the code now where you just throw in a new tool. So before interpreter was like very one tool minded and it just had the execute tool. Um, but that's not true anymore. Now it's much more flexible and can use different tools. Now there's another way that you can think about tools though. If anybody remembers the hackathon, Isaac came out and he won the hackathon by making a one sentence change to the system message, which was before you try to do something, check and see if there's a script to do it in this scripts directory. And then once you do something that you want to repeat, put it into the scripts directory. And bam, you now have automatic between sessions. This thing can write tools it can use in the future. And in his example, he wrote something that got the ticker of that took in the ticker and was able to check the stock price of it. Wrote that tool. Next time he asked it for a stock price, it just used that tool that it wrote. So in that sense, Cyanide too, that's just as great as it was before. We've been playing with the idea of, is there a reason maybe to have a dedicated skills tool or something that is a little bit more like those other tools for those kinds of repeated things? Because if you do this, then it's going to have to go ls into that scripts directory and find the thing. Okay, moving from terminal is easier to work with textualize. Is Anton here? Because Anton has a beautiful GUI branch actually that uses textual, that is a kind of proper chat at the bottom. Languages, yeah, yeah, Anton. I don't know if I know that was a draft PR, but there was always kind of the interface between the front end and the back end that felt a little bit wrong. I think I got the abstractions wrong with the generator update, that made it harder to do those kinds of things. Now, because this thing just spits out an OpenAI compatible endpoint, I really think that we can get some really exciting graphical user interfaces to this, and maybe things that go off and become their own companies. Because all this thing is doing is it's saying, here I am in a place where I can run code safely. I'm going to emit an OpenAI compatible endpoint. Now, anything that can connect to that, including, by the way, Uba Booga, all the great things that are out there, all the Streamlit interfaces that are out there that connect to OpenAI, they can connect to this. All the stuff that I've seen some people build great things in Anton number one in Textualize to make great terminal interfaces that are clickable. And if that connects to this OpenAI compatible endpoint, it should be easier to maintain and understand and be compatible with other great projects too. Um, a patch with LiveKit. Does the new UI have any patches for some of the disconnect issues? So that's all happening, Jordan, in the O1 repository. Which, by the way, you should check it out. What Kai has been cooking on in there. Image support is coming to the app pretty soon. You take a picture just like Rabbit, and it gets sent to the language model. There's a reason why over in Open Interpreter we're building everything to be an OpenAI compatible endpoint. It's so that this thing works beautifully with what I think is one of the best OpenAI compatible endpoint wrappers on the planet, that O1 app. This thing just points to an OpenAI compatible endpoint and can send messages and can send now images and can even now with this update send a screen recording in the same way that you have like this thing just is observing your screen. It works best on Android, but there is a way to even do it on iPhone. Kai is working on all this and is putting out amazing commits there. You can ask it about what's on your screen too. And because this thing is an OpenAI compatible endpoint on the other end, it just pipes it right over, pipes images over, everything. If you have patches to LiveKit to some of those disconnect stuff, Jordan, please do either put them into LiveKit, um, or into the O1, wherever they can go, um, because that'd be great to resolve those. We've been experiencing the same problems. Make it formatted to Open Web UI standards. Oh, I think Open Web UI has they can connect to OpenAI compatible. It'd be beautiful with the tool hub. See, as long as we start thinking about tools as scripts in a script folder, there is something kind of really feasible to imagine about rendering an interface that abstracts over that, right? Where you have your tools on one side, this thing knows in its system message where those tools are and how to use them. You really don't need to add much more complexity to this beyond a folder and a sentence change to your system message to get that kind of functionality. Hyperspace is sick. Love the design of Hyperspace, gotta say. Okay, can you give us a quick summary rundown again? Yes, we are putting out something which is a totally new generation of Open Interpreter. It is significantly better at using files. It can make targeted changes to files. It is using an agent that is 49% on SWE. You remember when Devin was 13% and it like, oh my God, the world is like completely changing? You know, we're there. The world has changed. And this is going to be in your terminal, 49% SWE in your terminal. And it's way nicer to use. Scrolling works. It's faster to start up. It's incredibly OpenAI compatible endpoint native. So the things that we've all been building on top of language models, you can now build on top of agents. And that's a bit of what's going on so far. So it's on the development branch right now, and we're going to try to get it out early next week. And it also comes with really cool ways of talking to it directly from the terminal too. So it's going to be even more accessible. So so Pranav too, with the desktop app, we would love to have you into the beta. We're going to do this a little bit at the end. We can do a bigger thing with this, but we've been trying to figure out what the best way for non-technical folks to use Open Interpreter is. I think that this is a really great way for technical folks to use it, is with the open source interface, and they can customize it and plug in their own models, and it's a great agent. But the desktop app is something that we're trying to get right for folks that have never opened their terminal and who would never want to, use curl to install something. And we have a bunch of folks on the beta now, and we're constantly iterating. And we would love your feedback, Pranav, and to get some help um, figuring out how to make this thing really easy to use for people who are non-technical, but just as powerful. Um, so actually, yeah, Mike, do you have in the chat, or is there a good way to get invite into the beta?
Yep, pop up to channel and roles. There is a question asking if you want to be a beta tester. Limited time only.
We just opened this up for the house parties.
We did, yeah.
So for folks that are here, do get in there, and then pretty soon, once things are more public with that, we can have a house party, of course, that's dedicated to that, and to get really deep into the beautiful stuff that Ty and Victor have been working on. Ask OI to summarize recording this. Could I, in theory, send a text message to OI? I don't know if Morrissey is here. Is he? Um, but yes, this is especially simple now that there's going to be a great OpenAI compatible endpoint stuff in there. Which right now, if you run interpreter dash server, that is what it does on the classic version. It worked great. Opens up an OpenAI compatible endpoint. But this one is going to be much more focused on that, because that one also opened up an LMC compatible endpoint, and it was a bit messy. But so when this is out next week, if you wanted to send a text message to OI, all you would need to do is make something that receives those text messages. And actually, if you look up Morrissey's Mac Mini server, I think that's what it was called, Morrissey's Mac Mini server. It was something that he just loaded up onto his Mac Mini and then made it so that whenever he received a text on the Apple ID that was associated with that, it would pipe straight into Open Interpreter, do things, and then text him back. So we could be out driving and just have a virtual computer, or not a virtual computer, a real computer at home that's connected to his reminders and everything, and can browse the web. And what's fun about this too is that didn't have anything close to image support. That's totally feasible now, because this OpenAI compatible endpoint being proper means you can actually send images to it. And that means you could be out, take a picture of something, send it, design a snake game, and then send it to your Mac Mini. Which dir should I submit my PR? Definitely in the O1 directory, or in the O1 repo. Although it depends. So if it's for LiveKit, Jordan, then that might actually be better to point at LiveKit. It'd be great if we could all kind of like, for the stuff they're building, make it as good as possible. Okay, so TwoDog is Love and Advanced Profiles, so that'll be good. How can I download a local LLM to use offline on my phone? I don't know, actually. It'd be cool to see from anybody else who has experience running language models locally on their phone what the best performing thing is. I'm quite used to connecting to a computer running Ollama, Llamaphile. Llamaphile is extraordinary, and cloud models, but I haven't done it on my phone. Is this in the Android app or through Termux? So actually, because Termux, as far as I understand, this is just going to let you run CLI tools, and this thing runs entirely through the terminal. If anything, this should be much easier to set up on Termux. Actually, Mike, it'd be cool to think about actually
Yeah.
a new guide for that, because now it's going to depend on genuinely a tenth of the packages and probably a hundredth of the package size. This thing is a much cleaner interface. We're pretty much just using OS to make changes to things and then connecting to a API. So this is that other stuff. Umbrus was for the Android app. Yeah, Llamaphile on the phone is interesting. And definitely, yeah, I think for very small computers too. I mean, I really do love Llama 3.1 and Llama 3.2 are great. Um, they still aren't the best at tools, and that's really what it is that we're going for here. but I kind of imagine that those are some of the great small ones. And yikes, by the way, on the desktop app, we've been saying this, but the idea from the beginning was to build this thing in such a way that we're not closing any doors to those other operating systems. So we are going to put out a great Mac desktop app first, but we are doing everything we can to get Windows and Linux support as immediately after that as possible. And we're not making any decisions that close doors to that or lock us in. Um, David needs more tokens. Um, and to be clear, by the way, all this stuff I showed you today, it works on Linux, works on Windows, works on Mac. Always we're going to have cross-platform support for the open source Open Interpreter package. And again, for a lot of folks that are using Open Interpreter here, the terminal interface is a really great interface for it. I mean, you essentially have a chat box app already on your computer. Um, and it has the ability to drag in files. It has very, very deep supports where you can right click on a folder and open it up. So for folks that are working on Linux and on Windows, we're going to just keep giving a really, really great computer controlling agent. And frankly, the terminal is so deep into operating systems that it's going to be a great interface for those platforms until the desktop is supported on those platforms. So everything you saw today is cross-platform. Are we moving off of LMC? I think so. I think so. I think it's time. And it'd be interesting to see what, if anything, kind of came from LMC that we should keep. But LMC was kind of meant to be this uh, intermediary before tool use was really a thing. Before Mike and Ty's podcast really got big. It was meant to be kind of like something that was able to handle all of the weird parsing stuff and turn it into something that could have like a computer role. I think that that tool calling is the new standard. It's a great standard. And tools inside OpenAI, the OpenAI compatible tool calling functionality is a really great standard, and I think it's one that we want to adopt. And we've also adopted the Anthropic tool calling standard, so it can talk to both. Um, but yes, this means that LMC, which was kind of a intermediary language before there was good specs for how it was the language model should run functions. Um, and so yeah, this means that we're going to be moving off of LMC. I'm putting it set up where you could start a Discord call with an OI voice agent and talk to it. Whoa, Cyanide, how'd you do that? Because as long as you can make something that talks to an OpenAI compatible endpoint, you can resurrect that. So the things that have been built right now that you know, like what is it, chat VLM, like the kind of the uh what Tag Nike built, that thing kind of connected to the old, very custom way that Open Interpreter talked um to other programs. And now that it's OpenAI compatible, there are a lot of great things out there, and I bet there's something, some Discord voice agent kind of thing, in the same way that we have with LiveKit, great compatibility with them. Um, it'd be cool to see something in this Discord call, maybe at the next house party. Um, hell yeah, yikes. You can make OI purchase groceries for you on Amazon. Almost. So we have played around a lot with the computer, with the GUI controlling stuff that Anthropic put out recently. It's really good. It's capable of locating icons and text and clicking on things. Um, Omni Parser is a really great kind of open source alternative to that, which is not going to be ready by the launch of this, but we do want to support OS mode that doesn't have to be using one of the big models that can understand images and output coordinates directly from it. And before, the scaffolding that we had with OS mode, um, which was using OCR to find elements and semantic search of the screen to find icons, that made it much easier for smaller models to handle OS mode. Nowhere near as performant as the Claude stuff. I really recommend you try that out if you haven't already. But Omni Parser is how we can get the local stuff ahead again. because it's capable of splitting the screen into elements really naturally in a way that a text-only language model can do. So while theirs is unable to make purchases on Amazon, I tried. It doesn't want to use your credit card. Claude does not want to make purchases. It doesn't want to do a lot of things like post on social media. It can't even go on Twitter really without shutting down. Um, that's not going to be a problem for OmniParser. And I think we'll be the first people to do it. Um, yeah, I see folks with this. Yeah, you have to find a model that's competent enough to do this. Now there is some interesting ideas from web controlling agents and some of the stuff that I showed at the last house party too, which is actually taking the um, HTML elements of the page that you're on. That requires kind of connecting to Selenium and finding the right way to have it talk to that. But that is text only stuff that's capable of making purchases because a lot of it is just like listing out buttons on the page. Okay. Okay. I just want to make sure I'm up to date on how we do this. She's Whisper in TTS, Peptamen. Okay, cool. Um, yeah, how's Anthropic computer use versus OpenAI tool use? Well, so it's sort of the same. I mean, ultimately, all the Anthropic computer stuff is it's a tool. Um, and and actually, in just the same way, now that we have this kind of standardized version of that backs off from the model and says this is not Anthropic specific, but it has all of the same capabilities and it plugs into models that are fine-tuned for those tools. Um, the moment that somebody else makes it so that their image models are capable of producing coordinates, this is going to be the best interface to use it for, to use those models with. So in a sense, it's both. This adheres to the standard of Anthropic's computer use stuff, which is just producing images and emitting coordinates to plug into a particular kind of tool. But it is also using Light LLM under the hood, and it's OpenAI compatible and can hit up things that anything that accepts images and accepts things uh, on the Light LLM's providers page, which is dozens and dozens of language model providers. So this really is the way to combine those and get a standard ACI agent computer interface going. Um, can we work on an iOS app as a community? Um, of course, yeah. And the current one is React Native in O1 in the O1 repo. So that should be a good place to start for the iOS app. Now I know also it might have been Alto Sierra, it might have been somebody else, I hope, but who made a Swift version of a O1 app. So it was capable of doing a lot of the things that the O1 app could do, but it was in Swift. Um, React Native is pretty nice though, because you just make it in one code base and then it works on everything. And that's the one that we're working on. Yeah, yeah. So segment anything. Yeah, vision model that produces coordinates. Um, so not only, yeah, it's amazing. Segment anything is awesome, and that kind of technology has become OmniParser, which is by Microsoft, and it's a great open source project that is this. Yikes! It's capable of looking at things on a screen and producing the coordinates of all the relevant elements, and then passing it to a text model. So that's where we're going to get local OS mode. 100%. That's where we're going to get it. Oh yeah, the convert anything tool. That'll be cool. Um, totally good to plug the pip package here, by the way, Mike, too, on the tool use, which has
Yeah,
that. You have the link.
I shared it earlier, but I'll put it up again because you can find it in the tool use pip package along with a few other tools.
Yeah, thing's awesome.
And I've actually found working with them in conjunction has been awesome. Where if tool use spits out an error or something, I can just hit WTF and then it'll fix it, and then I can have
Yep.
OI operate on some of the outputs. So it's just these this whole toolkit's coming together really nicely.
Oh, I love Gobblebot 2 seeds. I don't know if anybody saw Dockling too, that IBM put out is really great too. Um, it's not quite this, which is able to do that across big folders and things, but um, probably for the view tool, we're going to go into using Dockling so that it can read PDFs with table order and all these incredible things that they've trained into that model. Okay, so I would love to start to kind of open it up and get some more folks up on stage too, because I know that there's a ton of great projects that have come out of this community that's far beyond Open Interpreter, sometimes using it, sometimes not using it. Um, we're all focused on trying to figure out what does the next generation of computers look like in the age of language models. Um, Yeah, Anton. See, this is going to be so much nicer with UV too, because that's the mess that I'm dealing with is switching package managers from Poetry to UV for this new one. We're going to get a clean opportunity here to just like absolutely, you know, clear out all the packages and get it down to ideally like 4. Um, nothing like is there a microphone in Neuralink? So and I do want to make sure though that when we put stuff out, that it keeps the things that we love about it. Oh yeah, no, exactly. Yikes! It's such a funny thing too that like, well, we never saw Neuralink in sci-fi because it's so boring. Like what computers would look like in the future. It's if it was Neuralink, it'd just be like that's it. I'm just like staring at my computer. So we never saw it in sci-fi. Um, but that probably is exactly what it's going to look like. There's another feature from Open Interpreter Classic, which we're trying to figure out if we should keep, and which is the ability to export conversations within the chat. Is that something that folks use? So I'm getting the sense that profiles is definitely something folks use. Um, maybe there's a proper way of doing the max budget, and if that can be, it's kind of in the code right now in a way that is a little too much to maintain, and it's broken before, and it's broken other things before. So if we can make it so that, you know, maybe the thing just sends a message at the very end, and then if that's over the max budget or does something like that, then we can keep that feature. Um, if that can be done simply, I see the argument for doing it in CI. At the same time, by the way, to just have a max kind of rounds, that might solve that problem too. Like if I say I'm not going to allow you language model any more than 10 tries at this problem, um, that in a sense is the budget manager. I'm interested if that solves that problem for anybody who might think about wanting to use this thing in CI. If you could just specify, you know, a max messages or something and say this thing can only do 10 messages, that's tool calls or regular messages, that would be much simpler to maintain. Yes, you can totally change the port. This one, by the way, is going to have a lot more customization. So interpreter line numbers is going to decide whether or not you want those line numbers to print on the side. Um, interpreter code style right now it's Monokai. I like that a lot, but other folks have different things. Um, configuration is like a really nice thing about open source projects. So we're going to keep as much of that as we can. And including definitely the interpreter server port and interpreter server host. We will respect those environment variables. If it ain't got rust, it ain't touching my brain. Um, so yeah, Jason, you could totally change it. But any love from anybody of the features of exporting conversations you have with Open Interpreter? Like we have in there like a percent sign, and then you can export it to a bunch of different formats. You export it to Markdown or to Jupyter or a bunch of other things. Um, is that stuff that folks are using and we should keep supporting those or not so much? I wonder if even a yeah, see, I just use it for debugging too. Um, I didn't know that was a thing. Oh, I've used it once for fine tuning. Okay, that's kind of interesting actually. Yeah, I've thought about this. Christian, that's a really cool idea. There's no reason why you wouldn't be able to have a magic command that changes preferences about the chat as it's going on. Later, Emil. Yes, please come to the next house party and demo some stuff, and anybody is welcome to as well. Um, enduring personality, data store. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So we do have right now, we have a messages navigator, and your conversations get saved to a particular place. And we can keep that. We can minimize it and make it simpler. We can throw it out if it's not something that people are using. Um, just for specific tool call. That's kind of interesting, the idea of you might change it for that moment. Like maybe you start the chat off and you default to a really tiny model, and then you go, this thing is not getting it, and then you run a command to change the model to a beefier one. I'm totally into that. In fact, there's no reason why you couldn't change everything. Like we could just have folks output something that then lets them specify how they want to change whatever parameter is active there. It's all in memory. Cool. Resume tasks from 3 months ago. This that gets into the detaching from the bash executor too, in an interesting way. That if this thing can just like send off a server and then lay back and maybe do other things and then check in with it. There's something really excited between those two ideas. With OSMint, it's super important to be able to track what it's doing, how it's doing it, and give it feedback like don't do this, and keep a historical log of the times that you told it to do that. I think about what the best way to do that would be. Um, I would think that a good way that this is the thing that I've like found out from this year of seeing the generator update be the architecture for this whole thing is that you can get the abstractions wrong, which make those kinds of problems, which makes those kinds of projects much harder to build. Or you can get them right, and then we don't even have to build that kind of stuff. It's just that easy for you. So profiles is, I think, kind of the location for those sorts of ideas to happen. Um, and and yikes, I can totally imagine, for example, a profile which says, "Hey, there is a feedback.txt. It's on the desktop or it's wherever. It's in my home directory. And if the user says that they liked something or didn't like something, or if they say a plus key or a minus key, then I want you to write what you did and then go into the feedback and put that in there. And then in your profile, you can just dynamically take that stuff from feedback and pipe it into the system message. And you've built what you're thinking of here, which is something that is capable of, maybe at the end you also tell it to ask the user for feedback on what it's doing. And it's just going to say, how was that? Did I do okay? You hit the plus key, and then it goes and it tries to summarize what it's done and saves it to that file. And then next time you open this thing up, it's going to have its feedback stored there. Um, you can ask it to keep it concise, even to edit the whole file, make sure it's concise. So we might be able to get around that by just having the right abstractions instead of having to build those specific features. And we can instead have profiles kind of be like the App Store, be like the custom GPTs of this world. Um, and I get this idea of a historical log for training. That's really interesting. So maybe we do want to hold on to messages somehow. Um, I'm thinking we move a lot of things to just like a .oy directory in home or something like that. Right now it's in a kind of bizarre place. Um, I was using my bash shell and realizing that they've solved a lot of these problems already. In a sense, we're just another terminal. An export functionality would be better as a plugin. Just give clean API access to the chat logs. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. So instead of maintaining the export stuff, the idea of having something that we just are going to save the conversations in a predictable place, and then um, if you wanted to have a script that turned those into Markdown files or Jupyter notebooks, um, we can point folks in the direction of projects that want to build that kind of functionality, but we won't have it in main. Um, That's kind of gorgeous. Yeah, give me a config interpreter. Yeah. UI and UX edition will be awesome. Totally. I totally feel the same. Have some plugins to dump it, including the cookbook repo. Yeah, we could have a slash plugins, and then maybe even that stuff that's available um, from the command line. This might be better, honestly, uh, as a community repo. Let's talk about this more and think about what we want to do with plugins. Um, but it'd be great to have something that was integrated, and I do think that profiles is kind of a really great abstraction that gets a lot of the way for plugins. Has anyone got a Chroma DB or other local vector DB to work with OI? Yes. Um, weirdly, the second version of Open Interpreter, the big one, the generator update, actually did come installing a Chroma DB along with it, which was really heavy and people hated it because it took like a minute to start up. Um, so it's something that totally is feasible with profiles. Mike, I know you have the talk to DB profile. That's not talking to a vector store DB, is it?
Nope, but it can be configured to do it. It does Postgres, so it wouldn't be that hard to just configure it to point to something to do, proximity search or whatever.
Totally. Yeah, have it you know, Chroma DB can be stored into a particular directory next to the profile, and then you just say, hey, this is where it is. Um, okay. So eventually, if you have everything saved, you can have it look at tasks that are similar to those that it potentially performed in half as much token use and identify why and use those better versions of the same workflows. That is really interesting. There was something that I got the chance to work on right before Open Interpreter came out, where we were kind of trying to build um, dreaming. There was this project called Edgar, and and it was trying to figure out how can you have something that just is does things. Then in this case, it was looking at its skills. It wasn't looking at its message history, but it would look at its skills while you weren't using it and just find better abstractions and clean them up and test them out and make them work more reliably. It was dreaming. It was kind of playing with all of its tools and kind of getting them a little more, um, it was maintaining them. And that might be something like Two Dogs, what you have there. I mean, if you have a profile that looks at that particular skills directory and is going to just test them out and try to improve them, um, essentially you could just go back and forth between using Open Interpreter with a profile that generates skills. Um, we might as well just launch with that. I mean, that as a profile is it's ridiculous why we wouldn't. Just that single message, that single change to the system message that lets you have it save scripts to a particular place and then know to refer to them. Um, and then if you had something else that just looked at that directory of scripts and tested them out, this is really good to try to like brainstorm ways of building these different things, either as first class features or as recomposing the right abstractions. Um, because I think that's what makes really great open source projects last a really long time. By the way, what did you send us? Yikes, there was like a really cool like did you delete it? It was like a really cool terminal looking interface. It was like all green and cool.
Oh, that
Um
was Two Dogs profile generator. Where'd it go?
yeah, where'd it go? Where,
Two
come
Dog,
on.
would you keep
I
holding
gotta
out
see
on
it.
us?
Yes, SQLite Vec. I think Ty has played with this a little bit too. Um trying to go all local for legal use cases. So Christian, by the way, you might be most interested in the desktop app because that's something that we're trying to figure out is like if you're dealing with something that is not a technical use case, and we're trying to make something that can just be pointed at models, and we can talk about the best way to do that. But it's going to be easier to use that on documents that are not Python files and other things in the terminal. But if you're trying to go all local right now, then doing something like a Llama file plus this new interpreter, which is capable of making targeted changes to files, that's going to be a great combination. Um, yep. Yep, this is what I envision for a tool ecosystem, keeping track of how efficiently did we accomplish task. Yeah, that's so interesting to like, you could almost imagine like, um, yeah, just having another thing running that's assessing that every so often and trying to improve it. Maybe even upon exiting a session of an interpreter, it says, "Do you want to have us kind of, you know, calibrate based on what the session we just had and improve our skills or improve the system message or something?" And just all it does then is spin up another profile, which is tasked with doing that. Um, that's kind of interesting. Um, I have a directory of scripts that I make with OI. But I'd also make that anyway. This is interesting too. Mike had this idea of, you could, if you have a directory of scripts that you build with OI, you could actually make it so that that's accessible from the command line without even talking to a language model. If there were skills, you could imagine something like running I dash dash skill and the name of the skill. And then just from then on, it's going to be piped right into that skill. So you use this thing, it builds skills, it knows where to put them, and then you don't have to talk to it again to get it to use those skills. They're now just great command line tools. I was trying to do some digging last night where I was like, hey, can we just like make a Python file and put it on my command line? How hard is that? And Open Interpreter was like, well, yeah, of course we can. We're going to edit your path. We're going to make this file executable. We're going to like edit your Zersh. And I was like, this is ridiculous. I just want a Python file to run on my command line. I have a Python file. I just turn it into something that I can say from anywhere in my computer to run it. Weirdly, not a solved problem. And maybe in the age of language models, if we have skills that are saved in a certain place, we'll build accidentally this, what I feel like should have been the infrastructure to let me just run a script that I write from anywhere on my computer. Um, and yeah, so by the way, we have like been trying to take this project. We have a team of folks. We have not announced anything about this, um, but we are going to soon. But we did raise a seed round, and we have been able to kind of be here all working on this full time, because of a really generous contribution. So we'll announce more of that, but ultimately this is all still like, um, that's in pursuit of trying to find a nice consumer desktop app down the line. And we have a while here though where that's just going to kind of keep this team building a really great open source thing, and Open Interpreter will always be free to use. That's just something that I feel like kind of had to say. Thank you so much. But yeah, we'll have more stuff. We'll have a proper announcement about that soon. But yeah, I don't want to just ignore those things that um, we're trying to make this legitimate and have a really great team of people work on this full time. And we think there's a future for a lot of different projects that could come out of this. And the desktop app right now is the thing that we're kind of focused on. Um, but okay, how recent is O1? Is it available on Windows? Yeah, so you mean the O1 like the voice interface stuff that we got in the that the other repo, or do you mean OpenAI's O1? We made it's an interesting naming choice, I guess, on their part because we were first, but because that came out on in I think March of this year, and we have now a great iOS app for it. Still all open source hardware, um, but there's also a great open source Android and iOS app that's on that repo too, and that came out I think in September. Um, all the OpenAI one, of course, I want to make more models through it. Yeah, the name collision. Luckily, they did go oh. Thank you, Jason. Um, they did go oh, and we kind of kept doing the 0 1, but then we said oh 1, and so it gets a little confusing. Um, I want to play with uh, the developer update, this thing that I showed this morning. There is the developer branch, and all you got to do is run. Here, I'll paste it in too. And it looks like from this chat earlier too, some folks are having some like package collision problems. So the moment that I hop off, we can prioritize that. But I might as well just throw in this too for folks that are working on it. Um, Kinetic, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm excited to have you be a part of it. Later, Peterish too. Yeah, PipX is interesting. We actually like I played a lot with PipX in the early days, and I remember Anton was talking about it too and having a version that did that. But it's actually it's a bit hard to imagine installing pip packages in the same way. So when the thing goes to install a pip package, where does it install it? If you run it through pipax, then it goes there. And that might be what we want. Like pipax is great, it's better than pip. But I remember before in the old architecture when we were dealing with the Jupyter notebook, it was actually installing pip packages and then it wasn't able to use them subsequently. And so we had to kind of not go too deep into pipex. Now that we're in this new architecture though, we should revisit it. I mean, maybe the recommended way of running OI should be in pipex now, which is what Anton suggested a long time ago, and he was right. Um, Having some problems with GUI. Wow. How does that yeah, with oh no, I wonder if they pulled it. You could try re-updating BTC John to see if well, I guess if you just did that, then that should have definitely pulled the latest from LiteLM. But you might want to upgrade, force reinstall everything, and because they definitely should have that model mapped, that Claude 3.5 Sonnet model.
Mhm.
Um, when's the next hackathon? Oof, I don't know. I don't know. We'll do it soon. I think that this is going to open up a lot of doors to that. And it might even be nice to kind of time it not too long after this. And we can do something remotely too. But it's always felt like um, you kind of had to know a lot to build on top of Open Interpreter because we were using LMC. It was custom. And as we adhere to standards and make some standards ourselves too with these tools, um, I think we're going to start to see a lot more hackathon projects come out of this and opportunity maybe even to make profiles that then make it as default profiles. Could be kind of an interesting way of pitching a hackathon. Um, yeah, Jason, that shouldn't be happening. Let me make sure that everything's in there. You kind of had to know. Oh, yeah. Okay, Jason, do you want to try polling? Do you want to try polling again? Um, and let's see if it's still doing that. You might have to do force reinstall because it's going to be the same package number. Um, okay. I don't know if Two Dog is still here. I know he had mentioned that that there was something that he was working on. It'd be cool to invite some more folks up to the stage and talk about whatever it is they're working on or the future of Open Interpreter too. Um, this has been really helpful, by the way, to everybody who's kind of giving feedback about the things that are nice about the command line interface and the things that we're going to change. Um, check the efficiency. Yeah, totally. Yeah, so this does feel a little bit like it might be a good idea. Yeah, Anton, I would love to see what you're working on.
Uh,
Hey,
uh, I'm not really working on anything now. I was just thinking of bringing up like installing pip packages at runtime is a terrible idea
yep, yep.
because it breaks the environments.
Yes. Yeah, wait. Do you mean like when Open Interpreter goes to install a pip package?
Yes.
I think that there is a solution here with I mean honestly pipx might be the best. So if folks did want something to install new packages and they use it with pipx, that creates a virtual environment just for that one tool, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. So when you run interpreter, it runs it within a virtual environment. But if you run a command line like pip install something, if interpreter runs that, hopefully it should use the environment yeah, I think it should use the environment, like the Python module pip.
I think too now that yeah, and the new bash tool that's in there now that uses the sudo terminal and is going to be much cleaner. Um, now that we're out of Jupyter land for that, it's not as much mayhem of kernels and like child processes starting kernels and things like that. It's way more straightforward. So I think any of the weirdness that at least I was experiencing with the pipx stuff before, I think it should be fixed. Um, so we should try that, and we should think about doing what you had suggested almost a year ago. Anton, total just OG of this whole thing, by the way. It is like, thank you so much for everything that you've done.
No problem.
This would not be anything like what it is now without you out there helping people. And that's a great idea with pipx, and probably should be the recommended install. Does it play well with UV? Is there anything there that's like really nice or not so nice? Like for the one-click
Like
install.
both pipx and UV has worked for me. Pipx is like easier for the eyes, less to remember. Pip install pipx and pipx install open interpreter. It's quite simple and easy to remember. UV is more. No, but I don't think it matters either way. UV does use Rust though, so
Yeah, that's a good direction to be going in. Ultimately, this whole thing should be Rust. Okay, UV tool is pipx. So this is crazy. Pipx run, you could just pass in a URL to a Python file and run it. Should I trust this? Yikes. Should I just run this? Pipx is working. That's cool. So and if it's in UV then, and if the one-click installer switches to using UV to install Python if it doesn't exist. Ideally, we really want to have something that like it does not do that. Zohib, no, Zohib. Ideally, yeah, we want something. Yeah. I was really worried about that. I was like, I think this is okay. It's got a, you know, actually, I don't know why I trusted this in the world. It's like the most garbage URL ever. This literally could have been anything. What the fuck? Wow, yeah, I hope that didn't do anything. I'm gonna go look at that actually. Wow, I can't even click on it in Discord. If I click on it in Discord, it says potential
you
dangerous
just
download.
shared your API keys.
Oh my god, I
FYI.
never knew. Okay, let's go. Thank God. It just says print pipx is working. Okay. This was the long con, is that I like totally I'm like, yeah, yikes. I trust that. Link. You mentioned IX earlier. Yeah, so it used to be IX just while like trying to get the new version working, but still having the old version. So I just had I as classic interpreter, and then IX was the new one. But now it's just that. And we'll have that so that the new open interpreter will run as just I and as interpreter, and interpreter classic will probably be IC and interpreter classic. Oh, that's so cool. Ixia, what a great name. Um, yeah, I feel like there's some interesting things here with aliasing that we actually might want to get into the docs at some point, because you can imagine that for folks that have profiles that do specific things, you could alias the profile to some specific tiny thing. So then you build a profile and then just run that from anywhere, and it accomplishes that task. UVX is pipx, but it builds a throwaway environment. It's interesting. I think we want to persist the packages that it installs. That's the only thing. Is that feasible, Anton? Like, does it install it for that tool for forever? So then next time you use interpreter, it's going to go to the same virtual environment for that tool, or is it per
Yes.
set?
Yeah, it creates a virtual environment, and then it once you run interpreter, it runs interpreter in that environment.
That's pretty great.
I
Yeah,
haven't
yeah.
used
WTF can make that work.
UVX. Uh, I
Yeah,
just use
UVX. I've
UV
never heard
tool
of that.
install. Yeah, it is same of it belongs to UV, but um, yeah, I haven't read up on this.
Yeah, Johnny, by the way, so the WTF command was inspired by the fuck commands. If anybody's seen that on GitHub, they have like 80,000 stars. And all it does is it just takes the last command, the fuck command, which is super popular. And if it has one of those things that's like, did you mean? It'll just grab that and then use that. And then they also have a bunch of kind of specified regexes so that if you type a common misspelling of something, you can just hit fuck, just type in fuck, and then that'll fix it. So we thought we'd drop a character, WTF, and make this thing language model powered. And when this thing is running connected to, I have mine on 4.0 mini, it's a no-brainer. Like you hit an error, WTF. And then this thing just looks at the errors, sends it to the model, and then it outputs its response directly onto the command line. So you're not in a chat all of a sudden. It's super lightweight. You're not locked into anything. Like an error happens, WTF, you'll just get a command typed into your terminal. You can backspace over it and edit it and then send it off. So clean. Yeah. So um okay, actually, so I'll have to hop off before maybe just a bit before 2 so we can close it down. Um, but if there's anybody that's kind of you know, especially if you're opinionated about any of the things that that we've been sharing, that if there's something about Open Interpreter that should stay how it is, if there's something about Open Interpreter that could be a whole lot better, but you're not seeing us move in that direction, um, this has just been like best year of my life of getting to meet a lot of people who care about the same things as me and like using these kinds of tools. Um, and I think we can all make a really great one, make the best version of it. That is not only the best from the agentic front, and I think it is now with this, but it's also the best to use as a developer, like the WTF command, and being able to type in I and it running so fast and looking so beautiful and being so scrollable. Um, so yeah, if anybody wants to hop off in these last or hop in these last few minutes, as a longtime Ruby dev who's new to the Python ecosystem, I'm astounded at how fragmented the Python packaging management system. Yeah, I think everybody says that too. I want to see who have to shit. Um, Python's bad. I often have to feed docs. What's the best way with OI? John, do you mean you want to give it documentation so that it makes a change with regards to that documentation? Is that kind of what you mean? That was good. So with this one, it now has a specific tool that lets it read pretty much any kind of file and just without cluttering your terminal, it'll just pop it into the context of the language model. It can view a file, it can view directories. So I would literally drag in your folder into the terminal and say, I have docs here. Can you read these? And get ready for what I'm about to tell you. Now, if you wanted, you could make it so that the profile actually include that stuff in the system message. And we'll have some documentation about that soon. Bye, Emil. It's good to see you. But yeah, for now and in the most general sense, I do think this view tool has just like dramatically upped the game. This is nothing like old interpreter. The gloves are off. And this thing can really get in and see a lot, read a lot, and make targeted changes. So it's great with docs. And we will have like a demo bot that does take when PRs come in that uses this to do that. Running into some issues. Is this with the new N2 dog? this is going to be fun to, I'll just drill through all of these and fix all the problems that we report here. So if anybody that's using it could just paste the errors they're getting, um, we can speed run a lot of this. Oh no, with your thing? Oh, okay.
You have 1 month
That's
to
totally
fix it,
right.
Two Dog.
Yeah, you have a month to fix it. If you have any links for it too, feel free to plug and we'll send folks that way. Um, Go look at Yikesology's YouTube channel and any of the AI actions with manual will change your life with the CLI's Ruby Go style programming. Easy plug. Go subscribe to Yikes. Subscribe to Yikesology's. Um, easy plug. A very easy plug, by the way, would be tool use. So I'm sure we all now kind of know it, and like a lot of folks here have been on it. But that's another one that I would just love to plug is Mike's and Ty's tool use podcast.
We got
Um,
some good guests coming up. It's really exciting. But even
no way.
Yikes mentioned AI in action. It's in the Latent Space Discord server, and we're actually talking Open Interpreter this Friday. So this time tomorrow, we'll give a little demo. Me and Nick's are going to show like how we use it, practical use cases, actually putting it in action. So there's the link in the chat. Check it out.
Oh, that's
Yeah, and
awesome.
Anton's been awesome at sharing the tool use episodes here, so really appreciate that, Anton. It's been awesome seeing it growth. I'm really happy that people are resonating well with it and getting some value because we just want to share what we work with, what we do, and there's a lot of good builders out there that have the same message they want to put forward. Jason, what episode was Jason? Episode 7. Jason was 7. Orlando was here for. Two Dog was episode 3. Oh, what a good community. I love it.
I really enjoyed going on there too.
Oh yeah, Killian, episode 5. The banger.
That was really fun. This is okay. I feel this is a good moment, I think, for us to wind it down. Unless there's any kind of parting messages or plugs folks want to give. What an exciting time to be part of this community. We are about to see something that is dramatically more performant than Devin in many, many, many people's terminals that is easier to use than anything that we've built before. This this is so exciting to get to share this with you and to try to shape it into something that's actually useful for us. And ideally, too, with some of the stuff that we've done that lets you plug into it, there's going to be also great projects that get built and extended on top of it and profiles that we can share. And just know that the house parties that we're doing, you know, a lot of this was filled up with updates about what we're doing because there's so much, but we really want to be like letting folks come up and demo the things that they're building. And so just know kind of for the next one that if you want to come out and show off something cool that you're working on in the kind of agent computer controlling language model space, we would love to see it. This is full of the best people in that world, I think, changing computers, making them easier to use, making them more capable in the age of language models. I think, I think with that, I'm gonna peace out. A lot of love. Thank you so much to everybody who stuck around. It was good to see you. Good to see you, David and Zohaib and Yikes, totally. Victor, good to see you. And Christian. And for folks too that want to add the role to themselves too to be a beta tester, Christian, if you weren't already, it'd be awesome to see that, see how legal can get involved with this. Um, Super good to see everybody. That's not Toma, is it? It might be. Good to see you if it is, or if it isn't. Hypers, thanks for the questions earlier too. This was really fun. Jason, good to see you. And Anton, thanks for coming up too. Um, I think the PipX gospel is it should be a part of what we're doing to have stuff be clean. Bye, Baram. Bye, Anton. Later, David. Bye, Christian. Bye, Zobib. One more month. See you guys soon. Thanks so much, Mike, too.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day. If you have any questions, you know where to
Bye,
reach
bye.
us. Beta testers, check out the beta testing channel. Anton linked it in the chat. As soon as you get yourself the beta testing role, it will appear. There's a pinned message, which Anton also escalated for you to book a meeting with a member of the core team. We'll send you up with the download link. We'll help you walk through the process, and really excited for you to play with it. It's really cool. It's really getting better. So really excited to have people try it. But thanks again for tuning in. Favorite thing is the first Thursday of every month, and we'll talk soon. Bye, everyone.